Everyone. So Euphoria season 3 continues to push boundaries, but Jules scene in episode 3, the Ballad of Paladin, is sparking a very different kind of controversy, and it's not just because it's shocking. After being mostly absent in the premiere, Jules return and we quickly see how much her life has changed. She is now living in a luxury penthouse funded by a wealthy older benefactor and has completely stepped away from her art school life. What starts as curiosity about easy money turns into something much more consuming as she becomes financially and emotionally dependent on single client. This leads to one of the most talked about moments of the episode where Jules participate in extreme form of control restraint. For some viewers, the scene feels purely provocative, but the real issue goes deeper than the surface level shock. The practice shown is part of a broader category of consensual power exchange dynamics where control and vulnerability play central roles. In theory, these dynamics rely heavily on trust, communication, and safety. Without those elements, the risk, both physical and psychological, can become very real. And that's where the discomfort begins. The show presents this moment in a way that feels isolating rather than empowering. Jules isn't shown negotiating boundaries or expressing agency in a clear way. Instead, the scene emphasizes how removed she is from rest of her life. She's cut from her education, her friendship, and even her sense of independence. Rather than exploring the nuances of this dynamic, the story frames them as a reflection of her downward spiral. This ties into a larger pattern in season 3. Other characters are also shown engaging in different forms of role play or identity performance, but once again, these moments are less about exploration and more about emotional distress. The characters aren't portrayed as choosing these paths from a place of confidence. They are driven by insecurity, validation, or control. That's a noticeable shift from earlier season. In season 1, the controversial storylines were still complex. Characters like Cat explored similar spaces, but there was a sense of agency and self discovery. The audience was left to interpret whether these choices were empowering or harmful. Season 3, however, feels more one sided. It leans heavily into the idea that these behaviors are symptoms of suffering rather than personal experience. Jules' storyline highlights this the most. On surface, she appears to be thriving, wealthy, comfortable, and desired, but the way episode is framed, especially through Rue's narration, makes it clear that there is a cost. She has been isolated, controlled, and slowly disconnected from her identity. Even the visual storytelling reinforces this. Jules is portrayed almost like someone trapped in a fantasy, beautiful, distant, and confined. It creates a metaphor of being admired but also be known. So while the scene itself grabs attention for how extreme it is, the real controversy lies in what it represents. It's not just about pushing limits, it's about how those limits are being used to tell the story. Instead of opening up conversation around complex themes, the show narrows them into a darker, more cautionary lens, and that shift changes how the audience engages with both the characters and the world they are in. In the end, Jules' storyline isn't just provocative, it's unsettling in a way that goes beyond the visual. It raises question about control, identity, and whether the show is exploring this idea or simply using them to highlight suffering. And that's what makes this moment more controversial than it first appears. Thank you for watching. Bye.